Well, hi, Andrew Bell here. Now, as I mentioned in the last fortnight's edition, nowhere is the housing crisis greater than in the rental sector. And I gave some insights on just how strong the demand is at present in that market. And of course, the demand is driven by two factors. One is the growth of the population, and of course, the rapid decline in construction levels. You will have noticed there's been a lot of calls over the past few weeks to reduce immigration. I understand why, because people are saying it's feeding the housing crisis. Of course, the situation's been driven by falling construction numbers and rising population growth. And we see recently there's been a lot of calls over the past few weeks for reductions in immigration. None likely to happen. So we're going to continue to have population growth, certainly well beyond the construction levels that we see at present. In terms of the rental market, for over 100 years, Australians have depended on private investors to provide rental accommodation. Over 90%, as I mentioned last week, 90% of rental properties in Australia are owned by everyday Australians who just simply own one or two properties to try and provide a bit of a nest egg for their retirement. The key to making that work has been the ability to negative gear. But with the current state of the economy, less and less people have been able to even save sufficient money to have a deposit to buy an investment property. And so we just simply have dwindling numbers of new investors coming to the marketplace. But what is really needed now is a rapid injection of rental properties, to rethink of how we supply those rental properties to the market. Nearly all of the properties bought by private investors to rent have been homes that were built for sale originally. They met all of the design and construction standards for purchasers of home who want to live in the homes or apartments. This means that everything is of a much higher standard, and as such, it results in higher purchase price, which requires a higher rental price to justify the purchase. What is needed now is rental accommodation built to meet the needs and the affordability of people and in the places where tenants need those properties. That's like close to employment, close to transport, close to shopping centres and close to schools. They need to be built in such a way to make the rents affordable. And so the whole concept of build to rent now comes into play, a concept that's never been seen before nor encouraged here in Australia. The number of Australians destined to rent properties for the remainder of their lives is rising sharply, and so we need to help cater for these people. The beauty of build to rent, known as BTR, is that one single construction could provide anywhere from 300 to 500 apartments in one hit. The BTR market is simply rental stock held by one ownership, usually in a medium to large scale multi-dwelling apartment style building, sometimes townhouses and so on. And that ownership could be by institutions such as superannuation funds or fund managers or even offshore investors. BTR is well established in most large overseas markets such as the United States of America, United Kingdom, and most of the European cities. Look at a city like Sydney, where almost 36% of all the dwellings in the city were rented in the last census, which is up by comparison to 10 years earlier, where it was just 31.6%. It just shows the rapid growth in demand for rental accommodation. Our problem is that BTR is new in Australia. Local governments and all forms of government are trying to get their heads around it. For local governments, they play a role in allowing for different building codes, different requirements around the amount of parking to the number of apartments in a building, to even the size of the apartments, and of course, playing their part in incentivising developments with reduced infrastructure charges and even ratings for a period of time. At state government level, they play a part in overriding councils, where councils are slow in making decisions and perhaps are resistant to do so. They also can reduce costs by lower stamp duty charges and concessions on land tax, simply to incentivise the construction of these blocks. And of course, the federal government plays a role around the treatment of GST, capital gains tax, and the like. With Australian capital city house rents recording their biggest quarterly increase in 17 years, and the second highest increase on record, this is a no-brainer. The unfortunate thing is that governments don't move fast. And whilst they might eventually get to a point of approving a concept and putting legislation in place, it gets clogged up in bureaucracy. Now, with Melbourne's rapid population growth, congratulations. good to see that they're now leading the country with a number of BTRs under construction at present. For the rest of the country, and particularly here in our marketplace, we really need to speed up the processes as well. I'm working at local, state and the federal government levels at present to see if we can get our first sizable BTR off the ground here on the Gold Coast. And we'll work to get significantly more in strategic locations where they are also so needed. With so many people becoming increasingly destitute, those of us who can do something need to make the most noise. And my role as a director of the Real Estate Institute of Australia, and of course here on the Gold Coast, the agency with the largest rent roll, we'll do everything we can to fast track housing for our fellow Gold Coasters and Australians. I'll be back with you in a fortnight's time.